And welcome back, footy fans, to another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I'm your host, Coach Donnie Hesser, back with another Waffle wrap up. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I know it's been a few weeks since the Waffle men's season has rounded up. Sometimes scheduling can be fun, but we're going to get it in. Thankfully, we will talk about the Waffle and the amazing season that we were given this year out in the Western Australian Football League. And joining me today, the man, the myth, the legend, the voice of the Waffle for me, Mr. Paul Persick. Paul, great to see you, sir.
Great to see you, Coach Johnny. I'm not sure about voice of the waffle. I think that might belong to some other commentator who's been doing it for longer than I have. But no, I appreciate the rap, and it was a great season. I will agree with you. We were so blessed to have a great waffle season, the one that we had, one that went down to the wire in the home and away season, and an exciting final series as well. And of course, as you can see by my background, it all concluded at Optus Stadium in September, where the Thunder was the name for the third time in their short history. It was a great triumph for the Thunder, and sort of fitting with how the season and the finals panned out.
Definitely, for sure. And before we go any bit further, I know the man, the myth, the legend that is from Waffle WAFL Footy Facts, Mr. Rick Gauchi. Unfortunately, he had a few things come up, but I wanted to take the time early in the episode to thank Rick for his incredible help with me again this year on the podcast. Again, it's fantastic. Unfortunately, he was unable to make this time, so we thought Paul and I will soldier through. We miss you, Rick. It's always fantastic. It was fun working with you again this season. So let's hop right into it. As you kind of said, we have a premiere. We won't jump to it. Most people that probably know who's won it, but I'm going to save that for the end. And just really quickly, the men's finals was fantastic, Paul. We had some curveballs. We had a little bit of this. We had a little bit of that. Thoughts on the men's final this year? Because it was outstanding.
Oh, it was a great final series. There's no doubt about that. And it all started with that first final, in the qualifying final in Mandurah. Many expected Pure Thunder to get the job done at home because they'd only lost once at home prior to that final series. But then Swan Districts, they came in and got the job done. I mean, in great style. I was out there on the call and, I was thinking for those moments in that game, how are the Swans staying alive in this one? But then they got a big run in the second and third quarter and they got on with business. They won that by a couple of goals. And then the following day, Claremont away at Revo Fitness Stadium. How weird is that? An away game at Revo Fitness Stadium, but they still got it done. The semi-finals were great as well. And I reckon that this might cause a little bit of debate, but I reckon Pure Thunder's premiership was won on one kick. When you look at it in retrospect, that first semi-final at Lane Group Stadium, Pure Thunder were dead and buried with 5 minutes to go. And then it all hinged on that one kick. Blair Bell, the number 9, the mayor of Mandurah, got a nice little tap out from Liam Reedy out the back, had some space between himself and inside 50 and just banged it straight through the middle and won Pure Thunder the game. Think about this as well. Look at the space that Bell had between himself and the next opponent. He had about 15 metres on him. He could have gone off a step and kicked towards goal. If he missed, maybe Peel would have lost the game. But composure and experience by Blair Bell, that was another one of the great moments of the final series. And then one of my personal favourite moments was that preliminary final. Even though the game turned out to be one-way traffic for Peel, the crowd that was there, the fans made this final series so special. I mean, we had excellent crowds in all the final series, especially the grand final. But the one that stood out to me was the preliminary final. I mean, you look at the loyal Swans fans that were there and the Peel fans that travelled from Mandurah at Bassendean on that Sunday afternoon, just under 7,500 at one of the most passionate and intimidating football grounds ever to play if you're an opposition team. Steel Blue Oval, it was rocking on that Sunday. And the grand final, people were absolutely loving it. There was a lot of noise, a lot of passion, 25,000 people. The one thing, not just the on-field action that stood out to me, it was the fans that got behind it. It was incredible. And, the fans should be given a round of applause for making this final series as special as it was in 2024. And already the appetite for 2025 is already there. But the final series, there was some great action, tremendous matches. And in the end, we've got a premier team.
It's always fantastic. Absolutely love it. You kind of went through it and took a little bit of my thunder when it comes to each of the rounds, but you want to know what? We'll still go through it. We'll run through each of these rounds real quickly. We'll get to the grand final and then we'll kind of review the season, both the men's and the women's. Let's jump to it. First rounds of finals. And as he says, the Swan Districts with the shocker of the first round as they knock off Pale Thunder 65-48. I had to say, I messaged Rick Gauchi when I saw this and was like, Rick, how up and about about are you. And I thought he was going to jump through. I thought he was going to jump through the screen. He was so excited. I was so happy for him. It definitely a little bit of a shocker for me, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then the other one is also the upset as Claremont knocks off East Fremantle 79-55. I kind of went into this round going, okay, well, I'm 0 for 2 to start off this particular final tipping.
Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news for you. I was the other way. I
Mhm.
was 2-0. So the final started off okay before it all went to you know what come the grand final. But now heading to Lane Group Stadium on that Saturday to begin the final series, there was a lot of anticipation, but also there was a very good question asked by one of my counterparts who called the game on radio. What attitude was Peel Thunder going to bring on that day, considering that the Dockers had been knocked out of finals contention, losing to Port
Mhm.
Adelaide the week before? And there were going to be Dockers players that either weren't going to play or weren't in the right mindset. As it turned out, it got the better of them. Swan Districts looked more hungry. They were more desperate. Okay, they trailed by a couple of goals at quarter time, but the second and the third quarters really told. But it did come at a cost for Swan Districts. Jesse Turner limped off at the start of the third quarter with a knee injury that would cost him an opportunity at the grand final. He didn't play again in the final series. And Aidan Clark, he got reported in the second quarter for striking Brady Gray, and there was a lot of heated discussion in and around the WAFL community. Aidan Clark got 4 weeks as a result. They appealed Swan Districts, but that appeal, unsurprisingly, was rejected. I thought the suspension, okay, maybe a little bit rough around the edges, but I think it was there given what had occurred and the outcome. Brady Gray, he was all right. Ironically, he got the last laugh later down the track. But to Swan Districts, they got it done. Sandover medalist Nick Rokar outstanding. And also, Jai Shellcraft, he was in and amongst it in the midfield and a little bit up forward as well. And he kicked a couple of crucial goals near the halftime break. And also Brad Lynch as well. He boosted the forward line for the Swans. He kicked a couple of goals, and Lee Coleman with 4. Peel Thunder, they looked out of sorts, but that loss was going to, give them a lot of hunger later down the final series. And this one was a bit of an upset per se, but I didn't really see it that way. The Claremont East Fremantle elimination final, 12-7 to 7-13. Claremont, they had that home ground advantage, even though they were the away team. But there was just something about Claremont at the second half of the season where they had the momentum. Think about this. They had lost 4 of their first 6 games, and they were down at the bottom of the ladder. They would go into that final having won 9 out of their last 11. Amazing form from the Tigers. Their experienced players stood up. Rogers, Bolton, Alex Manuel, who has since retired, played his last game the following weekend. Callan England, 24 disposals. And Hamish Davis, he's likely to go into the draft in November as well. He bobbed up from the Colts team and played a league game at the end of the season, round 21, kicked 3 goals, and then he followed it up with 4 goals. It was a solid effort from young Hamish. 7 goals in 2 games, 21 disposals. Good midfielder, can play a bit up forward, lovely kick. He's got good balance, and he gathers the football so well at ground level. So watch out for Hamish Davis in the draft later this month. But first weekend of the finals, it turned the finals form book around, some may say, with wins to Swan Districts in Claremont. But as we'll discover later, it's going to get even more surprising.
Yeah, definitely for sure. Let's move on to the second round of finals. East Perth, the minor premiers, step in and they prove why they were minor premiers as they get a nice win over Swan District 72-44, and Peel bounce back, just edging out the Tigers by 1. I know the Claremont Tigers bench is probably kicking themselves that 6-12 scoreline. Probably one of the reasons why Peel continues on.
They just found a way to win Pure Thunder, and I'll tell you this: 6 goals, 12 in a final. 9 times out of 10 doesn't win you a game. I reckon Claremont can only have themselves to blame for kicking in accurately late when they had every chance to put Pure Thunder away. But going to that second semi-final, of course, East Perth, I thought they were magnificent, even though it wasn't the prettiest game in some aspects. They just looked more polished, and the depth that they had. I mean, when you're looking at players like Christian Amajuri, saw a little bit of ball, Angus Schumacher, who since this season has concluded has left East Perth as well. So East Perth have had a couple of departures since then. But just in retrospect, going back to this game, Angus Schumacher, he was excellent, 26 disposals. Scott Jones, he broke a record, the Big East Perth ruckman. He broke a record for the most hitouts in a WAFL game with any team, 81 hitouts. That is absolutely mental. 21 disposals to follow it up as well. And up forward, plenty of scoreboard pressure coming from the sources of Thomas Graham. He kicked 3, Amajuri and Hill kicked 2. Swan Districts on the other side of the coin, they missed Turner and Clark badly in that game. They had too many passengers, although they kept themselves in touch early in the second quarter, but East Perth just ran away with it and they shut out the likes of Chipper, Kelly, Lynch, Jai Shalcraft. He had 29. He was one of the Swans' best. And they just got beaten all around the ball all afternoon. And, they would have that week to recover from that loss, but I reckon that loss hurt them more than anything heading into that preliminary final the following week. And then whew, I was almost out of breath that first semi-final on the Sunday at Lane Group Stadium. Great comeback from Peel Thunder from 3 goals down with 5 minutes to go. And as we mentioned earlier, Blair Bell with that game-winning goal. And he even admitted, Mark Redding spoke to me on Around the WAFL before the grand final, and Blair Bell admitted to him if Blair Bell had missed and Peel Thunder lost, that would have been the end. That would have been the end of Blair Bell's career. But luckily for him, it went on for another 2 weeks with that kick. Liam Reedy, he was solid, another 44 hitouts. Jacob Hewitt down back, he played his role very well in the second half, along with Michael Selwood, who I thought was one of the best defenders in the WAFL this season for Peel Thunder. His shutdown role as a marking defender was absolutely terrific. Neil Erasmus, what a final series he had. He continued his form with 26. And Claremont, well, what more can you say? 6-12, and you get beaten by the barest of margins in the final. Heartbreaking. And not only that, Alexander Manuel, that was his last game. He got chaired off, and I reckon, and I'm still having that suspicion, judging by how he felt on the ground, that it might have been the end for Jai Bolton as well. He had 20 disposals, had 3 inside 50s, and, that premiership that premiership I think has eluded Jai again. And just judging by his emotion on the field and the body language that was present within Jai, I reckon that might have been his last game as well. Nothing has been made official yet, but I would just have that feeling in my gut that it would have been Jai's last game, and a heartbreaking way to go out if that is the case. But Peel, they go on.
Yep, and Peel continue on even after that as we go to the preliminary final, and Peel bounces back after getting knocked off by the Swans with a healthy, impressive 103-56 win over Swans, getting that matchup in the grand final with East Perth. Unfortunately, Swan Districts, they pull the upset early, but the Peel Thunder get back and get their revenge in the preliminary final.
What a response. I mean, you talk about an emphatic response. You look this game up, and that is an emphatic response right there. And think about this. Swans started off with 5 goals with the breeze. 5 goals to 0 in the first quarter. I was out there at Steel Blue Oval, and we were thinking, what the heck is going on here? What a start. Can Peel come back? And then Peel Thunder, in that second quarter, kicked with the breeze, and they made the most of it. And think about this. After quarter time, 4 goals to 15. After quarter time. That is a great turnaround after quarter time from Peel Thunder. And it was all down to their engine room. I mean, Peel Thunder's engine room fired on all cylinders. Neil Erasmus, as I said earlier, what a final series he had. And he showed it again with 33 disposals. He had 8 tackles as well. And in fact, they got out tackled by 9, but Peel's pressure on the ball was still effective enough to put the Swans under enormous duress all afternoon, especially after quarter time. Matt Taberner, he got delisted by Fremantle midweek, and he shows them how with 5 goals won. What a performance. Corey Tregenza in tandem with Taberner up forward, 4 goals, 9 between them, and you get that forward combination firing, that's often going to win you a game. But I think what summed it up for me as well, and I'm not putting any heat on the Swans fans, especially what happened a fortnight before in the qualifying final when Brady Gray was the victim of a strike from Aidan Clark. He kicked the final goal of the game, and he had the last laugh out of all of that against the Swans fans who've been piling it on Brady Gray, claiming that, they were saying he acted in that incident with Aidan Clark. It was a legitimate strike, if you want my 2 cents about it. And Brady Gray kicked the last goal, had the last laugh, silenced the Swans fans once and for all, and sent his team to the grand final.
Mm-hmm. And then in the grand final, they get the ultimate coup d'etat, the finishing touch, as you said earlier in the episode. Peel Thunder raise another Premiership Cup as they get a nice win over the minor premiers, East Perth, 92-59. Peel Thunder, another flag.
Yes, they're third in their short history, and I'm not going to discuss, the alignment stuff that fans often keep bringing and crying about. It doesn't sit well with me, that discussion. Peel deserved that premiership alignment or not. I mean, they were sensational on the day. Their best players stood up. They looked more polished. They were more switched on in the last quarter when East Perth got to within 10 points. And they deserve that premiership one way or the other. And for Adam Reid, the Peel Thunder coach, what a debut year. I mean, you can't have a better debut year than to win a premiership in your first year. And he got the job done. And he's a very well-spoken coach and a very nice bloke as well. So congratulations to Reedy, first season as league coach. And he's got the Holy Grail 12 months after Jeff Valentine suffered the ultimate grand final heartbreak in that loss to East Fremantle. Now Adam Reid's got the grand final triumph, so good on him. And Neil Erasmus, the Simpson medalist, what a final series. He averaged almost 30 possessions a game in that whole final series. He finished off with 26 and had 11 tackles, kicked 2 goals, 4 inside 50s, a solid all-round performance from Erasmus. But I think the way Peel came back when East Perth rallied back into the contest and got to within a couple of goals, the fitness level, the polish, and how Peel was switched on and the pressure they applied around the ball was such a difference in those final 10 minutes when the game looked to have still been in the balance in that last quarter. Liam Reedy, to add to that, he was sensational in the ruck. 36 hitouts, okay. He had less hitouts than Scotty Jones of East Perth, but he was a lot more effective. His follow-up work, I reckon, was more important in that game when Peel started to get the run on. Michael Selwood, 21 disposals. As for East Perth, I think some would say it was a wasted year. I say it was, but not completely. They got to a grand final and they've still got a very strong lineup, even though they've lost a couple of players towards this stage in the off-season as well, which we'll talk about later. But East Perth, that was a chance gone begging for them, but I reckon they'll bounce back in 2025. They'll learn from that, and they could be one of the sides to beat next year. But Peel Thunder, they deserve that premiership. They were the better side on the day, and they'll be celebrating up in Mandurah all right. It was a rowdy night over there, but who can blame them after a great game and a great performance over there at Optus Stadium in front of 25,000.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And you love the grand finals. You love the grand finals that have the nice crowds. And unfortunately, maybe not as competitive as I think some people thought. But again, Peel, congratulations, very, very well deserved. You had to do it the hard way, but you still win a premiership. So
Or
it is
finals, yeah.
for sure. So that's it. That is the season done. Both the men's and women's are done, but we can't end the episode there. We gotta look back a little bit, have a little bit of fun, and grab some fun memories. So I thought we'll go through, we'll pick out some fun things to chat about before we get through this episode. So we'll rewind just the littlest bit and go back to the women's season. I'm gonna save the game of the year for last. So we're gonna jump to it.
Okay.
Let's start off with, let's get the negative out of the way. Who's your biggest disappointment out of the WAFL W teams this year, player or team?
It was tough to find a disappointment because not a lot of things disappointed me about the WAFL W. It was a sensational season, but if there was a team that I thought disappointed me a little bit, it would have to be Subiaco. I expected them to, rise up the ladder again, contend for the finals, but injuries got in the way and a run of poor results didn't help as well. So for me, Subiaco would have to be the biggest disappointment in the WAFL W of 2024. They had it really tough in the outset. They finished off with 3 wins out of the last 5, which is, a good sign. But to me, they should have made the finals.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm going to say Peel Thunder, but not because I expected them to be in the finals or everything, but just the fall from grace. Last year, Peel Thunder was competitive. They were, and then this year they just, I don't know what it was, just nothing clicked for them this year. They did get a win, so it's at least they didn't go through the entire season winless. But it was very very hard sometimes to watch the Peel Thunder games because the team that I saw the previous season and the team this year, there was definitely a backward step, which is a little disappointing. Again, it happens sometimes the season just doesn't go your way. So for me, it was Peel, but again, it wasn't the results. It was just more of the regression that I saw from the season before. So let's jump to it. Biggest surprise, team or player? Who was your biggest surprise this season in the WAFL W?
Well, for me, the biggest surprise was actually West Perth making it to the finals and getting that far and getting into the preliminary final. I expected them to flounder around 5th this season, but the way they were able to galvanise themselves into a winning combination. And the biggest surprise within West Perth to me was the fact that they beat Claremont in Claremont 2 weeks before the finals. I mean, they were no chance in hell to beat Claremont that day because Claremont, dominant team, they had the wood over West Perth throughout their history. But when Claremont got it done on that afternoon against when West Perth got it done on that afternoon against Claremont, last kick of the day, mind you, the last kick of the day, that was a statement made that West Perth, they were going to be in it right from the get-go when the final series began. And the way they finished off that game against the Tigers really symbolised to me as to why West Perth, they were the unexpected risers up the ladder to me, but they were sensational.
Yeah, I'm 100. I couldn't split West Perth and Swan Districts just because I look at it last year, Subiaco and South Fremantle were the other two teams in the finals, and this year we get two new teams, West Perth and Swan Districts kind of join the
Mm.
party this year. What I loved about it was is that West Perth is that you just never knew how they were going. You just never knew when they were going to come up with that great performance, and sometimes you weren't expecting it. And as you said, that the knockoff of Claremont during the season, I was like, it did shock me as Swan Districts just because on their day they could be absolutely incredibly difficult to stop because they could be an offensive juggernaut. They could put up points
Mm.
and put up points and put up points. So it was fun to see two teams that didn't make the finals the year previously both make finals. So I couldn't split them. So I have West Perth and Swan District as my two surprise teams of the year. We'll jump to the next one, game of the year, and then we'll do team to watch for the next season. So, game of the year for you, Paul. What was the one game that if you have to go back and watch that kind of resembles the Waffle W season, what game would it be?
I think you can't go past the grand final over there at Pentanet Stadium in Joondalup. The continuation of this amazing rivalry in the Waffle W competition. East Fremantle, Claremont clashed in the last two beforehand. They won one flag each. And think about this, both the flags prior had been won from second place on the ladder. The top teams on the ladder had not won the premiership. And then they grinded it out in wet and muddy conditions. They were going at it like hammer and tongs, like nobody's business. It was a great contest. Okay, wasn't high scoring, okay. Everyone will talk about that. But just the way they applied themselves to the contest. I mean, you look at the likes of the Ortlips for Claremont, Zippy Fish, Harbour for East Fremantle. They absolutely put in 110% and in a grand final as well. And from a personal point of view, going to that grand final was my first call on radio for a Waffle game. So it was an incredible day over there on my home turf at Pentanet Stadium in Joondalup, and a close game as well, and really summed up these two teams as great Waffle W rivals, East Fremantle and Claremont. And I won't be surprised, if I'm to be completely honest, if they are at the top two of the ladder again.
I mean, if we keep it going, if we keep the tradition going, the next year it'll be Claremont at the top of the table, and it'll be East Fremantle in second, and East Fremantle is going to win the premiership because they keep flip flopping because East Fremantle, Claremont, East Fremantle. It's just kind of funny to watch these two, and I agree with you. It's just the epic rivalry between these two. Whenever they get together, it's worth a watch. Like you got to grab the popcorn, you got to watch these two get after it. It's going to be incredible. Doesn't matter. Claremont, traditionally the great team. East Fremantle has had some great youngsters come through. The biggest thing next year for East Fremantle will be is how do they replace Zippy Fish when she goes to the AFLW. It'll be interesting to see how East Fremantle bounces back next year. But like I said, if they keep this tradition going, Claremont shall be either undefeated or one lost. East Fremantle will finish second, and East Fremantle win a premiership. Let's see if we can Nostradamus this next year because these two just keep finding ways to leapfrog. Okay, you win, now you win. So it was fantastic. I agree. That grand final was absolutely incredible. Another fantastic one. I'm one of those. I will echo this all the time. Just because it's low scoring does not mean it's not a good game of footy. I have seen some
Oh, yeah.
fantastic games of football that do not score a ton of points. I love the physicality. I love the getting after it. Like I said, the previous season, East Fremantle tackled their way to a premiership. Claremont did it again. Claremont did it this last year. So I absolutely love it. It was magnificent. So we'll jump to it. Grab your magic ball into the future. Who's your team to watch next year in the Waffle W?
Well, call me bonkers, but I'm actually going to go on the new side. I'm going to say Perth because it is going to be fascinating to see how the players get on at the Perth Football Club and what their game plan is going to be. And also the addition of Caitlin Bassett into that side. What sort of work ethic and professionalism is she going to bring to the table in 2025? And Perth have got a great development program under President Adrian Barrett, who's a very prominent personality here in Perth, not only in football but in sport, adding his expertise and experience to this new Waffle W League program. So for me, it's going to be Perth. I mean, to see how they go in their first season in the main competition off the back of a very successful and very prominent Rogers Cup program.
Yeah, I cannot wait. It'll be great to see the Waffle W full in whole back to all of the teams that are in the competition having a women's side. It's fantastic. For me to be Swan Districts, I'm very interested to see can they keep this group together because if they can, they're going to be trouble because they're very good scoring wise. They're really solid defensive. They were pretty solid defensively. Couple games got away from them, but if they continue what they're doing, they progress. They barely missed finals this year. They make finals next year. Who knows? Maybe we see a bounce up. Maybe Swan Districts even puts their name into that top of the ladder with East Fremantle and Claremont. We'll have to see. I'll be fascinated to see how the Swans handle next year. I know Rick Gauchi is probably listening to this and grinning like a Cheshire cat. So we'll jump to the men's season and we'll go right to it as we kind of talked about it earlier, the Sandover medal, the best and fairest. And since the for the first time since 2005, we have dual Sandover medalists as Nick Rokar of Swan Districts and Callan England of Claremont both find enough votes to share the Sandover medal. So I have to say this is fantastic. And I know, Paul, I want you to tell that little stat that when you told me off mic, the fact that Claremont and tied Sandover medals are like peanut butter and jelly. They just always go together.
Absolutely, yeah. So as you mentioned, first tie since 2005. Jackson Cribb and Ashton McGrath shared the medal. Jackson Cribb, of course, played with Claremont at that time, and then back in 1984, the infamous three-way tie. So we're going back 40 years, along with Peter Spencer of East Perth. The two Claremont players that were involved were Michael Mitchell, and one of the all-time greats, and another great who is still involved with football today, Steve Malaxos. So Mitchell and Malaxos, those two in Claremont back in 1984 in the infamous three-way tie. So, yeah, last three ties, Claremont have been involved.
So if you get a drawn sound over metal where there's multiple people, Claremont's going to be part of it. So I absolutely love it. So we had to get that in again. Congratulations to both Nick and to Callan. Congratulations on Sandover medalists on incredible seasons. We'll jump to it. We'll do the sad part first. Biggest disappointment in the men's season this year.
I might get a bit of debate for this, but I've actually gone with the now former premiers, East Fremantle. To me, even though they played some good football, I reckon they were always having their backs against the wall, especially when they started with that 4-point penalty for the error, the administrative error, as far as the player payments and point system is concerned. To me, they were always going to find it tough. I expected them to go further, maybe a back-to-back grand final, but yeah, they just fell away at the end there with the elimination final and a couple of losses. The loss to East Perth in round 20, that really hurt them the most in that wet game at Leederville, because if they had beaten East Perth that day, maybe they would have had the double chance. And think about this. If they didn't have the 5-point penalty, they would have finished in third and would have played Peel Thunder in the first week at Lane Group Stadium, and Swan Districts would have had to play an elimination final. So it's that one little thing that can change a lot. And, and a couple of players as well. I fear that they're going to have a little bit of a slide down the ladder, maybe miss the 5, because think about this. Blaine Bokhurst has retired. Josh Schoenfeld has retired. And their premiership captain of last year, Matty Jupp, also retired. So they've lost 3 big players. And to me, I reckon, okay, blood some youngsters in, which is great, but I feel that they're going to be a little bit stagnant this coming season.
I'm gonna caveat mine just because of when I came into it. I remember when we covered last year, I was going, unfortunately, West Coast and Perth were the two teams that were kind of the whipping sticks, unfortunately. And then I saw some good signings by Perth, and they started the season with a couple of wins, and I was like, yes, this is great. It's great to see a team that was towards the bottom of the ladder jumping up. And I know they went through a bunch of injuries this year, so for me, it was Perth, but it was not of their own making. It was just the fact that just
Mm.
luck just was not on their side. They had some of the injuries to some of their high talented recruits, and it just kind of put them behind the 8 ball earlier this year, and they just could never really bounce back from it. So again, I say it almost with a little bit of a caveat is that I was hoping for Perth to jump up the ladder a little bit this year, and unfortunately, it just
I think
did
I can.
not
I
come
think
to
you can add to
fruition.
that with something as well. I think there's an additional point that I reckon you can make with that. Their coach Peter German resigned midway through the season, so that
Mhm.
made things a lot
Yep.
tougher.
Yeah, and that doesn't help either. You're going to get the bounce. You're going to get the first game under a new coach bounce, unfortunately, but it never usually extends past maybe 2 or 3 rounds. So, I'm hoping, crossing my fingers, that their recruits can stay healthy and maybe we'll see a bounce up from Perth next year. But it was definitely, I was a little sad. I was hoping Perth could get up the ladder and maybe test that 6-7 matchup, maybe even peak at potential finals, but unfortunately it just never did come to fruition. So we'll jump to it. Biggest surprise. What's the team that caught you by surprise this year?
Well, for me, it was Swan Districts. I mean, I didn't expect them to make the five at the beginning of the year, but with their recruits and, of course, with the vision of Coach Andrew Prune combining well for a great season, that really caught me by surprise, especially the first couple of weeks when the Swans started to get on a bit of a roll. And then they went on that great run of 9 wins in a row midway through the season. We're thinking, hang on, we got something that we're seeing here. And the Swans played magnificent football right throughout, midway point to the end of the regular season, continued it in the finals. And that's what caught me by surprise, considering when after round seven, they'd only won 2 games.
Hmm.
They'd only won 2 games after round seven, before round seven, and then 9 wins in a row. Amazing stuff to get to the double chance and have their best finish in years. And that to me was the biggest surprise. But what wasn't a surprise in that part was the amount of quality that side had. It was a sensational side on paper. That, like I said, I admit I didn't expect them to get into the finals. They finished third. They went deep to the finals, and I reckon they could be hungry for more next year.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on this one. I looked at it and I went, at the start of the season, I thought Swan Districts, I think they'll be right around that fifth, sixth. They may just slip into the finals. And then at the start, I kind of looked and went, uh-oh, that's not a good start. And then that run that they had in the middle of the season where they absolutely turned into a juggernaut. It was fun to watch. I know I went back and forth with Rick several times about that, just having him just be over the moon. And I know for some of them, he wasn't even able to watch them. So I had to rib him a little bit on it, but I was happy for Swan Districts and also because of the fact that the previous season they could not win a close game for their life, could not. And this
Yeah,
year
that's a good point that you make. Yeah,
and this year they get a few of those games to go their way, and you can tell that changes your luck when you can win those tough games that the season before you couldn't, and then this year you get them and it gets you into the finals. It wins you a final. It gets you into a preliminary final where you have a chance to get to a grand final. You fall a little bit short. Maybe you run out of legs a little bit, and then you get exposed. Then the talent of Peel kind of gets you in that other one and gets you down. But there's so much positivity there. I know that there's got to be a lot of confidence in the Swan Districts group that if they can keep their group together, next year could be a fun year with some of the teams around them having retirements and some movement. It'll definitely for sure on that one. So we'll jump to it. Game of the year. I think I know where you're gonna go with this. Game of the year. What was the one game you have to go back and watch?
well, we've got to go back to the WA Day Monday at the start of June, the Perth Derby, West Perth and East Perth. Nothing in it all day. It was maximum intensity throughout. The crowd officially will say 4,000, but it looked like 6,500 where I was over in Joondalup. I was fortunate enough to call the game and experience an amazing atmosphere amongst the West Perth and East Perth fans. It went right down to the wire. East Perth, a couple of goals down, traded goals, both West Perth and East Perth in the last quarter. And then Harrison McCready switched from defence into attack, kicked 2 late goals and won the game for East Perth. But the intensity of that game really typifies how important these derbies are on the public holiday Monday. It's one of the great traditions in the calendar, and that was a great exhibition of football on Monday. Footy was the winner on that day, but also that connects with the big crowd that was at Fremantle Oval as well for the Freo Derby as well, where you had 7,500 at the Port City. But for me, the game of the year was that Perth Derby, West Perth and East Perth, and that's one I'll certainly hang on to for a lifetime.
Well, there's definitely one that makes me smile a little bit, and I know it's kind of crazy to think of it. Round one, game one, West Perth slam block
Yeah,
right off the bat, Met
lights.
Stadium, as West Perth get the win because again, I'm getting into the league, and I know that Claremont again has this rich history in the league. And getting West Perth to start off with, and West Perth not having the season maybe that they wanted the previous season, but getting this big win at the start of the season, this was a shocker to me. And to get it by two under the lights, it was incredible to see Thursday night footy in the WAFL. It was absolutely magnificent. I hope they do it again more next year because I think it's great for the competition to get that prime time slot. So can't not go with it.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
start off the season. I know I've done this a couple of times where first game of the season, my sample W was a kick after the siren, and the first game of the season was my game of the year. Sometimes that first one, there's so much anticipation you can have a classic. So had to go with West Perth Claremont, first game of the season, 75-73 over Claremont. West Perth gets the win on that one. So I know Paul is
That was a great game.
grinning very much because it was a very good game, especially under the lights.
It was. And the first game as well, I mean, Thursday night footy, I mean,
Yep.
if the WAFL Commission looked at that and say, we've got to do it again, they've got to do it again. You know, start the season on that Thursday night, Pentanet Stadium under lights, no better sight.
Will not disagree with that one. And then let's jump to a team. What's the team next year that you say is the team to watch next season?
Well, it's a tough one to pick, honestly, because we've seen so many changes in the 1.5 months since the grand final. We've seen players depart East Perth, Swan Districts. We've also seen players come into Perth and leave the Demons as well. So it has been quite interesting. But for me, I reckon the team to watch is actually going to be the reigning premiers, Peel Thunder. I reckon it's going to be interesting to see what sort of Freo influence they're going to bring, because there have been a lot of Pure Thunder players that have either been delisted by the Dockers and have gone to other WAFL clubs. Ethan Hughes, for one, he's set to go to Swan Districts, for example. So I'm really interested to see how they can respond from these off-season changes. Another team I'll add in a second that I reckon is going to be great to watch, Swan Districts. How can they build
Mhm.
on a great season that they had in 2024 with the players that they have got?
I can definitely tell my soft spot for Swan Districts and Rick Gauchi definitely show up here again because I'm the same way. Swan Districts, again, you jump up, you just miss finals, you get to third. Could they jump into the top two next year if they can keep this group together, add some solid players as you said, they've got a few additions that sound like they could be very, very helpful next year. Swans could be quite the team to keep an eye on. So, like I said, Rick, you're welcome, sir. When you listen to this, you're very welcome on this one again. Maybe it's the soft spot I have, but I have to say that they were fun to watch this year. I cannot wait to
Oh,
see them
yeah.
next year. Like I said, if they can keep this momentum going, they will definitely be a team to watch. So, well, Paul, that is it. That is the season done. That is 2024 in a nutshell. We have bowed it. We have put it under the tree for this particular Christmas. What an incredible season of Waffle W and Waffle Footy. It has been incredible. I know Rick Gauchi is not here again. Rick, fantastic work this year. I know Paul has been kind of in and off. He's had plenty of things going on personally and with some things here. But again, I want to thank you, Paul. Thank you so much for hopping on the podcast. It has been incredible being able to chat Waffle and Waffle W footy with you this particular season.
No, thanks, Donnie, and big thanks to Rick as well. He did a wonderful job too, and it was great to be a part of it in 2024. Next year is going to be exciting. The Waffles 140th season as well, so a little bit of a sediment into that next year. So I'm already looking forward to 2025. Bring on March next year. The excitement is just about to begin.
It'll be absolutely fantastic. I cannot wait. I will definitely be having my popcorn up and cannot wait to watch more Waffle Footy again next year. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for another episode of Donnie's Disposals. Again, if you like what you are listening to, please like and subscribe. And remember, more footy coverage still to come. I know we have my VFL show still to do, which will round out my state leagues. And then keep an eye out. I'm not done over the off season. I do have a little bit of a series that I do, my off-season supporter series. This is going to be a fun one. Definitely keep an eye on it. So that'll be it for it. We'll be back with more footy coverage very, very soon.